I feel like it's a little bit of a faux pas because some people say like, oh, my photographer is just like very much like candid and sort of stands in the shadows.
Documentary style.
Yeah, don't get me started on that. Please don't get me started on the documentary style. Today we are chatting all things wedding timeline. Now this is one that we have spent countless hours perfecting. It's kind of funny because you'd think that timelines would be something that's just like copy paste from this wedding to the next, but it rarely is. However, I think that having a good timeline is literally the difference between a really good day and a really awful day.
Yeah, the wedding timeline can definitely make a huge impact on the wedding itself, on the amount of things that you can cover, on the pace of the day, the amount of chill time that you get to have, and we'll talk about that. How you can do a lot in a timeline if you're really effective, and we love doing that. We love prepping our brides and grooms to make sure that they're as efficient with the time, because we don't like wasting our time either.
No.
We want them to get the most out of their whole day, and so we spend a lot of time prepping, asking them what's important, putting it all in little increments and making sure that they have a good understanding of what we're doing all day, especially when we have second shooters, what they're also doing all day.
Part of what a timeline is really setting the expectation for what is to be captured.
I'm always so surprised when we get timelines back from a planner. And
or just like another vendor, right? Like if it's been like a photographer and we're the video,
yeah,
that's been like
that's
really,
true.
really bad, where it's like there's zero details.
Yeah, either the venue, really, it's like when do you arrive, when is ceremony, and when is dinner getting served. That's generally all they care about. And then when it circles through a planner, the planner's like getting ready, and then you arrive to the venue if it's at a different location. There's not any details around what's happening in getting ready, but that's when we come in and we really break that down into, well, what do you want to do at getting ready? Are you doing like robe shots with the champagne? Are you getting in your dress? Are you doing reveals? Those are all things that you have to consider, because if you only budgeted 30 minutes or an hour at getting ready, but you want 100 things to happen, that's when we have to rejig and figure out what's really important to you. Maybe we need to add some time. Maybe we need to move things around to make it work.
People don't realize how much time things take as well. And I know that we've had some, like you said, timelines that have come back from a planner and there's like zero detail until it really comes to like the ceremony or things like that. We do have planners as well that give us tons of details about what they want captured at these certain points of the day. But I think it's worthwhile for everybody who's involved to kind of have their say on how long things are going to take, right? You're not going to assume that the DJ can set up in 20 minutes without really asking them first too, right? I think like that's kind of the beauty of having a planner, because they have an idea of how long things take. But each vendor is going to have a different thing, and that's also part of their job, is figuring out, okay, well, these photographers don't like to separate, right? Or these photographers are okay separating because they have a team. Like those are all things that can play a big impact on your timeline as well. And then how much you have to pay those people, right? Like if a photographer doesn't like to separate with their second shooter, then that means they have to do preps separately, right? Or one prep isn't happening. And those are the types of things that I think are important, even just when people are hiring a vendor, is to kind of ask them, how does that work?
How does it work? Yeah, exactly.
How does it work? But when you're building your timeline, we are very good about making sure that we get in touch with our couples like leading up to the wedding. And we've built like a beautiful workflow system that I feel like we've tweaked 1,000 times to get it to where it is today. And I'm sure we'll still continue to tweak it another 1,000 times. But essentially that workflow is really designed to kind of capture all of what people want. When they're booking, right, they don't really know.
No, especially a year in advance, even 6 months in advance, you can have a rough idea. Maybe the venue has their general guideline of when the ceremony is and when you should arrive on site, but they don't have an idea of how long anything is going to take. Plus, it can change. Even if you have an idea at 6 months, that's why we meet with them about a month before their wedding, or like, you know, that 8 to 6 to 4 weeks before, because those details have hopefully been a little bit more solidified.
Yeah, like they've ironed out the details. They've booked all the things. It doesn't mean that we don't communicate with them beforehand. Like I have a couple who's reached out to me now for their wedding in May, and they're just kind of, before they send out their official invites, they're reaching out to me about timeline, because of ceremonies, especially with churches we've talked about this before, but churches can be specific on when they allow a ceremony to happen. And so in this case, it means that there's a massive gap between the ceremony and the reception. And that's okay, right? It's just about, okay, like how can we make the most of this gap, right? We do a really good job of talking to our couples, even when we first meet them, a little bit about timelines. I feel like sometimes maybe we go like too deep into it, but we're just so passionate about making sure that they've sort of thought of all of these things, because we don't want to recommend that they get like a 6-hour package or an 8-hour package when they have really what looks like a 10+ hour day. To me, I feel like it's a little bit like shady and kind of like a car salesman experience. If you're just like, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that. And really what they're saying is that, well, when we build the timeline, we're just going to invoice you for the extra 4 hours. So now that you've budgeted for 6, well, you're really going to need it for 10, and now you're going to have a big bill that's been unexpected, a year later or whatever. We don't like doing that because I think it's, like I said, that car salesman, like shady biz, pull a rug from underneath you style of salesmanship. And I just don't think that that's the right thing to do.
I actually just spoke to somebody not that long ago where they wanted us to start at 11 a.m. and they said they're waiting until after dessert to do their first dance, which is, I'm assuming, going to be 8:30, 9 o'clock. They were looking at an 8-hour package, and I was like, well, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
I also just chatted with somebody who's just not doing anything traditional during dinner, but really wants sunset photos. And I just wanted to be very clear with them. I'm like, if there's nothing happening during like the dinner part and we're not doing photos, like, I'm just telling you, I don't want to charge you essentially for time. Like maybe other people are like cool with that, and they're just like, yeah, 5 hours, perfect. This is how it works. Like take the money and leave. I feel like that's just not a good way of doing business. Mm-hmm. It just means that I'm not caring as much. Like that's just the vibe that I feel, is that, I don't know, maybe I'm talking shit, but essentially I think it's important to be upfront with people. I think that people appreciate that. And if they don't appreciate it, well, then they get what they pay for, right?
And that comes with experience. I think in the beginning, when people were telling us these expectations and we didn't really know what we would even expect at a wedding, and we go, yeah, okay, well, we'll try to do that.
My number one tip would be to ask all vendors sort of what timing on average that they need for things. For us, we already kind of know in our minds sort of how long things take, just based on, a couple of factors, based on like how many people are there, how big's your bridal party. Like we can kind of get a good sense of that. If everything's in one location, if they're in multiple locations, like we've talked a lot about buffer times and things before, but that's like a really important thing to have. If you are going to multiple locations on a wedding day, we've had it where it's like, prep is one place, ceremonies at another, and then the reception's at a whole other place, and then we're maybe even doing sunset photos at a different location, right? That's a lot of, let's just call it what it is, like shit can go wrong.
And sometimes there's even a location between ceremony and reception. If they're doing a ceremony at like a church or something and they don't want all of their photos afterwards to be there, then once they go from the church to the reception space, usually there's some time they want to go to some outdoor space somewhere and then travel. So there could be almost up to 5 locations on a wedding day.
Yeah. And I know it sounds so crazy that like we have to have these discussions with people, but I have to literally explain to them, I need time to leave you, go get our car, get in the car, pack our gear, physically get our gear to the car, right? Find parking sometimes, right? Especially if we're in a downtown location. How many times have you dropped me off and then I've gone ahead because you need 15 minutes to find parking? There's a lot of factors that most of the time couples have like a limo or somebody driving them. Like we don't have somebody driving us around. Like we don't have a driver. Those are things that we also have to factor in, right? Like you're not going to start your ceremony at 3 and have the videographer show up 10 minutes before to set up. It's just not going to happen, right?
Yeah, the tear down takes some time. And luckily, most of the time we have either a second shooter or one can do it while the other one stays with the couple. And we can multitask that way to save some time, because sure, on a timeline you could say, okay, from 4 to 4:30 ends the ceremony, 20 minutes of travel time, by 5 we should be somewhere. Sometimes it takes us 15 minutes to pack up and then go.
Or just 15 minutes to get people like from that venue to the next place, right? Like everyone wants to say hi and everyone's excited and like people want to hug, people want to talk, people want to congratulate. Like that's just, you need to buffer in that time. You need to, absolutely need to.
Buffering time into your timeline is also really important because you never know weather-wise what's going to happen. Even in the summer, even in the prime months of full sun, if it starts raining, all that plays a part into going from location to location. Or just if you plan on doing things outside and it starts heavy pouring, do you have a plan B for your photos?
We've been caught a few times where like couples just don't even want to go outside when it's raining, even with an umbrella. It's sad, right? Because in that situation, that means that they're just not getting the photos that we probably could have done. Obviously, I hope that all of our couples will decide to
suck it up
and try to go outside. I mean, I would say like 99% of our couples have been just like, okay, whatever, it's rain, let's make the most of it. We try to keep everybody looking their best for the ceremony, and then kind of after the ceremony, all bets are off. Having buffer time, like I can't stress that enough of how important it is, because without that buffer time, it can literally mean that everything else gets delayed or you're just giving something up, right? Like I think at the end of the day, we're there to do a service, we're there to capture all of the moments, but we also are there to sort of guide you, right? Like how many times have we been like in the middle of a ceremony and people will look at us if something's happening. Like they're not looking at anybody else. They look at us for advice. And the reason is because we just know, okay, like what, like we've even had it where they've looked at us to say like, what do we do for this part? Like where do we put the ring? Are we standing in the right place?
We're like the pseudo coordinator on the day of, I know that you hate saying that, but it falls under us because I don't think anyone else has met with them and put so much care into their timeline and knowing what happens next, how do we move from one location to the other. So I think we see us as the expert in the timeline, and when something does go wrong, they look at us, they go, what are we doing? You gotta tell me. You've been telling me all day what to do.
I've actually been called out in the middle of a ceremony and they're like, Bethany, am I standing in the right place? Are we centered? Like middle of a ceremony. And I'm like, please don't call me out like this. But no, you're not actually. So please move over.
I know. Whenever they come down the aisle and they get down, and especially when they have some kind of arch behind them and they're just off center, it's so hard. I try myself to move so that it looks like they're centered, but it doesn't always work, especially if they're not looking at us and we're just like, come on, go.
Number one pet peeve has to be that people are not centered. Like there's nothing worse. Like if this would be the only tip that you take away from this entire episode, is that make sure you are centered and make sure you're holding hands during the ceremony. Those are, I think we need to talk about that 100 times.
Maybe we'll do a whole episode on that.
Just a whole episode on
just ceremony and how to be centered.
Yeah, and hold hands. I mean, there's, especially for us, like from a video perspective, we usually don't mic the bride, right? We don't like to put like a big microphone on her. Big, but you know what I mean? We don't put it on her. If they stand like 6 feet apart, the audio can suffer, right? Because it's not really going to pick it up. I mean, hopefully they're using a microphone, but I mean, not always, right? So
that's true.
Holding hands, definitely way better, even if they're sweaty, right? Just hold on.
All right, that was a good little break from the timeline, and now we're gonna come back to it. But one thing I really wanted to say about the buffer time itself is the worst is when it begins with something late, like hair and makeup.
Ugh.
Because that happens, I don't know the percentage, but it must be like 50, 30, somewhere in that range, that the hair and makeup is still going on when we arrive. And we always recommend that they finish at least half an hour before we get there, if not an hour. And we get there, there's still one person, 2 people that have to go. And it really delays everything at prep. And we're pretty good at thinking on our feet about what we can do in the meantime.
Yeah.
Doing details, shoot the dress, do little bits and pieces here while we kill time so that we can start getting into what we should have started half an hour ago. Rushing through prep really sets the tone for the whole day. And I think that can make a huge impact on how you feel and the experience overall.
I could probably have a full episode about this. We have a lot of experience in the sense of like we've worked with a lot of hair and makeup people, and there's nothing against you, okay? I just want to point this out. We love you. You make our clients feel and look amazing, and we appreciate that. There's just been like scenarios, where, like in one case where they didn't hire like 2 people. So they were trying to do a bunch of people one after another, and they had a lot of people, and that just really delayed things. In those cases, I wish that they had considered like hiring 2 people. Sometimes I can't get into the space to start hair and makeup until a certain time. So there's just like a crammed amount of time for them to do it. And then we have to like cram everything in as well before like say a 3 p.m. ceremony. Like there's just so many things that can really affect that. Pay the extra money, get the extra artist, right? Like get the extra hair, get the extra makeup artist if it means just being done a little bit early. My favorite is when I'm walking in and they're already packing up. That is definitely my favorite.
Or you meet with them as you go up the elevator to go, they're coming out of the elevator.
Yeah.
That's one of the best feelings when you're like, all right, thank you for doing your job. Now it's my turn.
Yeah, and it's so good when that happens. And it's not because I don't want to like see them or chat with them. It's just because I know that like we always show up early too, right? So if they're early and we're early, like we can just get started earlier. I've had so many occasions where it's completely screwed us. And that's the problem that we have. And I've had like makeup artists reach out to me and go, Bethany, do you really need them done like an hour before? Like I promise we won't be late. And I'm like, ooh.
Yeah, well,
as long as you promise.
Don't make promises you can't keep.
Exactly.
But it should be the makeup artist or hairstylist's job to tell the client you need 2 people. It's not going to work trying to get it all done because they're the professionals. They know how long it's going to take. Unless you're having to redo people's makeup or whatever it is, or like it's out of your control that they just didn't like something or whatnot. But at the beginning, if they tell you they have 6 people and they only give you 3 hours, I don't know how long that takes, but a half an hour a person is probably not enough, I don't think. But if they say that and then you just agree blindly because you're like, oh, okay, cool, I'll just try my best and try to get it done, you're really screwing up everyone else that's trying to do their job on that day. Now let's talk about the information that we need in order to make a really efficient timeline. There's things like, when is dinner happening? Also, when is grand entrance happening? When is ceremony taking place? And then all the little events that are gonna be happening. So the locations is a huge one of getting ready, ceremony, reception, all of those things, because you have to kind of take all of the little key points. When is ceremony happening? And then you work backwards from there. Same with like sunset. When is sunset happening? When is dinner happening? So when you have all of the key moments, you leverage all the questionnaires that we send them that ask them, hey, what are all the events you're going to be taking? Like, are you doing grand entrance into first dance right away? Is your first dance later? Are you doing parent dances? Are you doing bouquet toss, cake cutting? There's so many little pieces that we ask the clients what they need from the whole day. And then once you insert all of those things, you add a time to it, a little time stamp. You can really figure out how much time everything else is gonna take. Even like family photos, how many combinations you're gonna have. There's so many little details in a timeline that you need in order to make it as efficient as possible. And that's what we love doing.
And the beauty of these questionnaires is that they are set up in a way where, from experience at all the weddings that we've been to, these are some of the most common things that we capture. The benefit for our clients is that they can choose what they want, right?
Yeah, it's a checklist.
It's a checklist.
Yeah.
And for them, it just makes it easy. It's a no-brainer. They can literally see, okay, well, no, I'm not doing robes, so I don't need to have that. I want to read a letter that I'm getting for my spouse. Like, all of that is kind of listed out into this thing. It's very easy for them to check off. And that just is an easy way for us to segue into, if you checked off every single thing on that list, plus added your own, maybe we need to talk about more hours.
Yeah, I would say at the very least, it turns into a 10-hour day if you really want the whole shebang.
Everything, all the bells and whistles.
Yeah, and that's not even travel time.
And that's not travel time. This is like, we're all on site, 8 hours, like maybe even 10, to be honest with you, if you want every single thing on that list. The other questionnaire that we send, which I think is very, like you talked about, kind of those important parts. The other thing it asks as well, which we love doing, is like the important people who are going to be there, right? And then even just like the general like coloring and the aesthetic and the vibe. That's some of the stuff that we ask. Like, do you want us to like be very like organize the day in the sense of like give direction when needed? Or do you want us to be a bit more of a fly on the wall? Our personality is that we are going to be very much there to give direction when we need it. But I mean, if you're just naturally doing all these things, like we don't have to give you direction. This is the thing, like we have such a knowledge because we've worked with so many photographers and we know what they do, and it is not very different from us in the sense of they have to give direction at certain points of the day. It's just impossible not to. It drives me crazy. I could literally go on and on and on about this, but that is literally our job, is to document the day and be there to capture as many candid moments as we possibly can, but also give you all of the things that you want in a checklist. My biggest worry is that we get to the end of the day and you're upset because I didn't get this specific moment. Yeah. The reason we do all of this prep work, that you fill in these questionnaires, that you have a timeline meeting with us, is because we don't know what you're thinking, right? Like we don't know what's important to you unless you tell us. The things that keep me up at night is knowing that maybe I missed something, right? Like I can't guarantee 100% of every single thing that we talk about I'm gonna get, because sometimes it just isn't time, or we do our absolute best to get as many as we possibly can, but it's just not the reality. So to me, I couldn't sleep knowing that my photographer was just going to show up and capture things as they happen, because I think, well, what if I miss something? Like, I need more details because I'd rather have more than not enough.
It all starts from that timeline when we go through the whole day and they check off everything that they want. We get you in robes, popping champagne, then you get in your
shots,
then
right?
Well, the detail shots is a big one, and we ask all the specific details. Do you want shots of your shoes, your jewelry? Do you want your bouquet? Do you want the bridesmaid dresses, the flower girl, the ring bearer? And same with the guys, with all of their suits and their pocket squares and their shoes. And there's so many little details that we ask for, because if we don't know, then we don't know.
Yeah.
So they have to communicate that with us.
If you write a special message on the bottom of your shoes and you don't tell me about it, I might not capture it, right?
And I think people underestimate how many things that you can do in the morning. And again, it's about buffering. We know getting in your robes and doing the champagne pop, it could take us a little 5 minutes. It could take as long as 15 minutes, depending how big the wedding party is. It's also depending on
how organized they are.
Exactly. Like, can they find all their little, like, their champagne flutes? Have they already used them? They need to clean them. Are they gonna wear socks? Are they gonna do bare feet? Those are all, like, so many things that you may not expect is an actual problem or something that you need to iron out beforehand. But when we get there and they start asking us all these questions about, like, oh, should we do it this way? Should we do it that way? Where should we even do it? If you're in a hotel room, most of the time we have to go outside to do it if it's nice, because the lighting sucks. Or if they want to spray it, you can't spray it in the room. Yeah. So there's so many different little things that can eat up time, and we have to just factor that in, especially if they're like, okay, just come for an hour, and then we want to do 10 events in the morning, and then we have gifts, and then getting in the dress and doing a reveal with the bridesmaid, reveal with the parents, then I want to read a letter. Then it's just like, it is non-stop how many things you can include. And I think that comes with the amount of experience and professionalism that we have. We have to tell them, you need more time, especially if we're then leaving from there to go to the venue and or like a first look somewhere else. Those are all important questions that we have to ask before the timeline meeting, so that we have, I call it the ammo that you have to make sure that in the end you come up with something that just makes sense. And then at the timeline meeting you could say, maybe you need to add more time to your package.
It's just about setting the expectation, and I think that's just what we've been really good at trying to do, is set that expectation up front. Like, I've literally had a conversation once with a bride and I was like, I can do this, but I am going to be barking at you all day. It's not fun for me to be like, Kate, we got to go do this. Kate, we got to go do this. Kate, like, that's literally what it feels like, where I'm just running at 1,000,000 miles an hour. The bride was so happy with how everything turned out, and she thought it was the best day ever. And in my mind, I was like chasing you around like a drill sergeant, but they loved it, right? I don't like to do that all the time. I like to do that when I need to, because I want things to flow naturally. But it's just the thing. It doesn't just flow naturally.
Because if we let things go naturally, nothing would get done.
Nothing would get done.
No.
nothing would get done. Or like we'd show up, like a lot of what we do too is prep our clients and say, make sure the room is clean, right? The space is tidy or whatever. I mean, not ever. I've had some where I've come in and it's been good, but sometimes I come in and there's like Tim Hortons cups everywhere, or there's like coffee, or there's a full spread of food that's half been eaten and torn up and like that's there, or glasses everywhere, or duffel bags everywhere.
Well, it's hard for them to even know which space we're going to be using for photos.
Like keep a space that is for like all the shit, and then another space that there's nothing in it. I don't even want you touching the bed. Like I want everything to be clean as if you just showed up into that hotel room. Like that's what we need, right? Like we need basically an empty room to do the photos when it comes to that. And like even, you know, when we do people's preps at home, I've had literally people, like, and we say this, like move couches. Like move couches into the garage.
We move furniture all the time.
Or I ask them to do it in advance. Take photos off the wall. Like we love grandma, right? Like we love her, but we don't really want to have her in every single photo of us as we're getting, like you're getting your dress on or getting your suit on. I mean, maybe you do, but most of the times that's not the vibe that people are going for. So yeah, when it comes to the timelines, we're very detailed people. I just, like, as I'm talking about this, I'm like, wow, we are so detailed. Do you think that that's a good thing or a bad thing? I think it's good, but I don't know. What do you think?
It's about the expectation, right? We love doing all of that because we care so much about giving the product the final photos and videos that are going to look like everything else that's on our website.
Yeah.
If you want to have photos like this is the amount of work and prep that needs to go into it.
Yeah, or videos too, right? Like if you want your videos to be like this, that also plays a big part, right? Once the sort of ceremony is done, it can either be like a very packed timeline after the ceremony, especially if you haven't done a first look, or it can be a little bit of you mingling with guests and hanging out, maybe some family photos that hopefully we've built a list in advance, right? The list in advance is going to give us an idea of how much time we need to schedule in for family photos. And also the other thing that plays a big part in this is the sunset, right? Because for us, if your sun is gone at 6 o'clock and your ceremony goes till 4:30, like we literally have an hour and a half to do everything. You know, if you haven't done a first look, that can also play a big part in the fact that we just don't have a lot of time to do things. So maybe you're not going to your cocktail hour, right? Like that's just like a conversation we need to have. People don't understand how much certain things play a role in that, right? Like if they want to have family photos in natural light, well, if it gets dark too early, we're not going to be able to do that, right? Or if they want to do their sunset photos, well, sometimes sunset happens like literally right after they get married. So it's like, okay, sorry, you can't talk to anyone. We have to go do these sunset photos. I think, again, we're always looking at setting that expectation, making sure that they know, like, after the ceremony, like, what events do they want captured? Sometimes it doesn't happen exactly at the timing of things, especially when you're getting married in, like, May, June, July, even August, where there's just, like, a lot of daylight. We have a little bit more flexibility there. When you're looking at fall weddings with a shorter daylight, that's where it runs into problems.
Yeah, because right after ceremonies, obviously, where you would hit extended family photos or all of the family photos, I would say an average budget of time would be 30 minutes for a fairly small list, unless you've done most of the immediate family photo stuff before the ceremony. If you're just doing extended, like grandparents or bigger group ones, 30 minutes is kind of what you should budget anyway. So let's say 4 to 4:30 is ceremony, 4:30 till 5, even to get people in line, figure out where they have to go, start placing them.
As long as it's all on site, right? Like if people have to go to a different one, that's probably my number one recommendation is do all your family photos
where the ceremony was. Yeah, even if it's at a church, do the family photos right outside the church right away. As a photographer, have an idea of where you're going to do the family photos even before the ceremony. I think you need to kind of
look at
see where the sun's gonna be and just play it like that.
I'm literally talking to a bride right now who's getting married, and she's like, I want to do it at the front of the church. And I'm like, well, we don't know where the sun's gonna be.
Yeah,
you know?
That makes a huge difference.
Because you don't want people squinting, right? So that makes a big difference. You might want it there, it looks the best there, but what if it's super bright and sunny?
Yeah, well, let's say that 30-minute spot at a good location is what you should budget. So that brings you to 5 o'clock, and let's say the sun is setting at 6. You're really just going straight into couples photos and doing sunset, especially if you're somewhere that has large trees.
Yeah.
You have to be there about an hour before to start it. And then you're done and cocktail is over. So you really have to make sure the time of year is a huge factor in how the timeline is going to roll out.
Also, what I've seen that's been really helpful for timelines is giving the timeline to as many people as possible. So having like your parents see it, having your wedding party people look at the timeline or have access to it. I think that that's super helpful as well, because then it's not like everybody's asking like the bride and the groom, like, when are we doing this? When are we doing that? You know? And I find that that's really helpful as well, is to almost assign somebody on your day that can help managing the schedule a little bit for you, so you're not the main person that everybody goes to for all the questions.
Yeah, just print it out or print a few copies of it, have it at your prep so people can review it. Most of the time, family members are there along with your bridal party. It's a good idea, especially if anyone's involved in the family photos. They should know at least how many combinations are they a part of and when and where they need to be.
Yeah, and then also the biggest tip too is to make sure that they can help, right? Like, I don't know who Aunt Susie is. I don't know who Uncle Bob is,
True.
Right? So having somebody who knows who these people are and can go round them up. And I love it. Like, I'll never ever forget this, where we did a wedding and literally I had two people from either side of the family who said, hey, here's my clipboard. I'm in charge of helping you do the family photos. I've already gathered everybody up over here. They're ready to go. You let me know when we're good. I was just so impressed. We were so efficient. Like, we saved so much time. I think we went through family photos and we did a lot of combinations in like 15 minutes, because everybody was just like ready to go. Everyone was prepped. Everyone knew where to be, and they waited, and gosh, that was so good. And I love that. Love, love, love that.
Right now we're doing Bob, Joe, this, and up next we have this, because we're pretty anal with the whole family photos and putting your hands in your pockets, not having shades on, not having phones in your pockets. So if they could even prep that ahead of time, just put your stuff on the ground, make sure that your button is done up if you're wearing a suit, make sure you have no purse on you. There's so many little things that we tell people before we take a photo, we gotta do all this prep work. If they hear you, yeah, exactly. If they hear you already yelling at people, most of the time it's just a funny little conversation that we have with people, and everyone always has comments, oh my god, you're so anal about all this stuff. But it makes a huge difference for us, especially for our clients. Like, we want to give them the best photos of everyone looking really good and making sure that they're standing at the right angle and that they're all in focus.
Nothing pisses me off more than having a phone in a pocket. Like, I literally hate it. Or wallets. Like, it's always like the men who have like the wallets and like the phones of everybody and like all of the car keys and stuff. I swear it's like a magician. They're just pulling so much stuff out of their pockets. I like it when people stand in a straight line, and I will literally straighten them because I want them to be in a straight line. I want everyone in focus, right? I also want people to not be like half hidden behind somebody else's head. There's just so many little details that go into that, and I know that it might seem silly and some people may not do this, but it's just something that I like. I'm very particular. Like you said, we want them to have a really good photo. Well, how do you do that? You make people take shit out of their pockets.
And it's not only a reflection on our work that we do for them, but it's also just a nice photo for them to have. We're very particular about.
Or just like this, like, you know, when they put their arms around.
Oh yeah, the
like
old
this
arms
just,
around.
Like, we're not hanging out in a basement, like chilling, you know? We're at a wedding, you know, the arms around, it seems cool and whatever, but it's not great for like the only official photo that you're gonna have of the day.
Yeah, especially if they don't undo the button of their jacket, so it's riding up on them, and then you just see like a hand sticking out of someone's shoulder. There's so many things.
The worst has to be for me though is if we've done video and the photographer doesn't do these things.
You just gotta let it go.
I can't.
Let it go.
I can't let it go. I can't. It's just.
That's why you leave and I stay there and do the family photo.
Because I can't do it. I really cannot do it. So please, if you are a photographer and you do not care about family photos as much as we do, then I think you need to up your game, okay? Because I'm telling you right now, it matters. I think it matters. I think that, again, like, this could be the only photo that they have with these people, these very important people who they're paying hundreds of dollars for them to be there. And now we have this awful photo. Like, no, we're doing it right because that's what you've paid us to do. All this to say, rely on your professional wedding vendor team that you've hired and lean on them for support, especially when it comes to a timeline. I mean, a big red flag would definitely be if they don't care about your timeline. And if that's the sort of vibe that you're getting, then maybe you just need to, get advice somewhere else. But hire professionals who care about these things, because it's really going to make or break your wedding day, in our opinion.
Every vendor is going to have an opinion about the timeline.
Oh, yeah.
You need to just probe them and ask them questions like, how long is setup time? Here is a list of the events that are going to happen on my day. As a photographer, obviously we're there from pretty much the start of the day, well, other than makeup and hair, all the way to the end. So we've dealt with a lot of different situations. We've been to a lot of different venues. We always get asked throughout the day, can you please keep us on time? Here's a list of everything that we want covered. Make sure that we get it. Then that's our job, essentially, is just to make sure that we get what you paid us to get. And we feel honored and we love it when there's that trust.
Yeah, because we've already talked about everything. We've already gone through your timeline. We've already asked you all the questions. We already know who's going to be there. You have your family photo list. On the wedding day, it's just like, Jesus, take the wheel, right? Like at this point, right? Like you need to just trust us. You need to have faith that we're going to capture what you're doing. If you don't have that faith in your photo video team on your wedding day, again, red flag, right? Like you should be able to trust them. You shouldn't have to micromanage them. They're going to do their best. That's why you hired them, right? Is to capture everything, right? And hopefully have a discussion over what's important to you, right? They're not going to get absolutely 100% everything because it's just impossible, but they should be getting a lot of it. If they can't get it, sometimes it's also just about them communicating with you to say like, hey, this just didn't happen. They know. They were there. You're at the wedding, so you know, okay, this just didn't happen if I was going to do a reveal with my dad.
For something like that, that's important, but if you have a must-have list of photos, it's hard to keep track of all of those, and that's why you hire a professional. We even go as far as telling our couples, hey, we're leaving in half an hour. Is there anything else that we've missed? Are there like last minute photos you want with groups of friends?
Yeah.
Anything at all. Most of the time they go, oh no, it's great, have a drink before you leave. And
all in all, we hope that you got lots of amazing tips from this episode, because there is a lot that goes into a timeline. I think we could probably have like 10 episodes about timelines, to be honest with you. The reason why we go so deep into them is because we care. And I hope that if you're watching this, that you also feel the same way, because there's just a huge difference when it comes to having a really good timeline, having a really good discussion. It just sort of helps with that stress, helps alleviate any things that might be bothering you or like keeping you up at night, and also just to make sure that everything is captured in a way that you have been dreaming about, right?
Yeah.
And that's really what this is about, is we want to capture everything in a way that you feel like we got everything that really was important to you on your wedding day.
yeah, it's a one-day event, and you need to be able to set the expectations for everyone that's going to be participating, because it's a group effort. Yeah. Not one person is to blame for anything. Not one person is going to be the one leading the whole charge. It's everyone has to work together. It's a lot of different moving parts. It's a live event. There's a lot of unexpected things that can happen. But if you have a really good solid plan going into it, I think you'll be blown away by all the different things that you can get covered and done, and you won't have any regrets on your wedding day.
Yeah, that's not what we want. We don't want to have regrets, right? We want it to be the best day ever, and that's what it should be.
Yeah, no regrets. Not even a single letter.
Anyways, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.